The chamber of the Galactic Council was so vast that sound took seconds to cross it. Floating platforms arranged in concentric rings shimmered with color, each holding representatives from 1,000 worlds. Creatures of every imaginable form filled the air with whispers, clicks, and hisses. The air shimmered with translation drones humming as they converted alien speech into countless dialects. At the very center, beneath the radiant crest of the council, stood 3 humans. The crowd quieted as the high speaker rose. His tall silver frame gleamed under the light, eyes glowing a dull red as he raised the ancient staff of authority. "Representatives of Earth," his voice thundered, amplified across the dome. "You stand accused of violating interstellar law. You have spread beyond your assigned territories, weaponized forbidden energies, and interfered with council-regulated space. How does your species plead?" The translation drones clicked, echoing the words back in Terran Standard. The 3 humans stood motionless. Behind them, a translucent shield kept them isolated on their small podium. The vast audience waited, some leaning forward with predatory interest, others watching with disdain. To most of the galaxy, humanity was a new species, primitive yet ambitious, a race that should have been contained long ago. Finally, one of the humans stepped forward. He was tall, with streaks of gray in his short hair, wearing the dark uniform of a Terran envoy. His badge read only one word: Hail. He looked up at the ocean of alien eyes and smiled slightly. "Earth acknowledges the charges," he said, his voice calm, "and requests clarification." A low murmur rippled across the chamber. The high speaker narrowed his eyes. "Clarification? The evidence is irrefutable. Your colonies occupy restricted sectors. You have deployed gravitational singularity devices. You have disregarded every directive issued by this council." Hale tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "We only expanded where no one lived. We used technology of our own design. We harmed no one. That is not for you to decide." A reptilian delegate hissed from one of the higher rings. "The laws of the galaxy apply to all species, even the young ones." Another delegate, crystalline and faceted like living glass, raised its shimmering limb. "Your kind came from a single small world and now control 14 sectors. You build weapons that alter time and space. You ignore every warning. The Assembly will not tolerate your defiance." Hale remained calm. The 2 humans behind him, one a woman in a pale blue suit, the other a quiet aide with an interface tablet, exchanged brief glances but said nothing. Hale folded his hands behind his back and spoke again. "We have not defied the Assembly. We simply did not recognize its authority over our existence." The words struck the hall like thunder. For a moment, the entire chamber froze. Then chaos erupted. Shouts, roars, flashes of color as translation drones scrambled to keep up with the uproar. The high speaker slammed his staff, a crack of energy silencing the noise. "You dare reject the council's rule?" Hale met his gaze. "We respect the council's efforts to bring order," he said, voice level. "But humanity does not kneel to powers it did not elect." Several delegates rose, furious. "Arrogant primitives," shouted one. "Their world should be isolated." Another shouted, "Sever all trade with Earth." A third hissed, "They are dangerous. Destroy them before they spread further." Hale raised a single hand. The motion alone brought the room to uneasy quiet. "Before you act," he said slowly, "you should understand something. We are not a threat to your worlds, but we will not accept control over our destiny." The high speaker leaned forward. "You speak as if you have a choice." Hale's smile faded. "Everyone has a choice. Even you." For a moment no one spoke. Then the speaker's eyes brightened with anger. "Then hear the choice of the galaxy. The Assembly votes now." All around the chamber, panels lit up with thousands of glowing sigils as each representative cast a vote. The dome darkened. Silence settled as the results formed above them in holographic light. The image flickered and the word appeared in hundreds of languages. War. Gasps, growls, and applause filled the air. The high speaker struck his staff again. "By the will of the Assembly," he declared, "the Galactic Council proclaims open war upon Earth and all its colonies. May your people face justice." The sound of alien applause and howls shook the hall, but Hale did not move. He simply lowered his head as if he had expected nothing less. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet enough that the translation drones almost struggled to catch it. "If that is your decision," he said, "then I advise you to reconsider it quickly." The high speaker frowned. "Is that a threat?" No, Hale said. A warning. The other human, the woman, stepped forward. She carried a thin tablet, its surface glowing faintly blue. She pressed her thumb to it, and a coded signal flashed across the chamber, so brief that only a few noticed. Somewhere far above the Council's world, in orbit beyond the station's sensors, something responded. The aliens laughed when they saw the humans being escorted away by armed guards. To them, the Terrans looked small and helpless, surrounded by towering enforcers in shimmering armor. As they walked through the crystalline corridors, the guards whispered among themselves about how quickly the war would end. Earth had only a few colonies, they said. Their ships were crude. Their armies were small. It would be over within a week, but the humans walked calmly. None of them spoke. Their eyes were distant, thoughtful. Hale stopped near a large viewing port that overlooked the planet below, a luminous sphere of silver oceans and green clouds. Beautiful, he said softly. A fine world. I hope it survives what's coming. The guards exchanged uneasy looks. As they boarded the transport craft that would return them to their ship, Hale's aide leaned closer. The signal went through, he whispered. They're ready. Hale nodded once. Good. Then everything is set. The transport detached from the Council station and drifted into open space. For a long moment, the humans simply watched the stars. The woman broke the silence. Do you think they'll realize what's happening? Eventually, Hale said. But not before it's too late. Back in the Council chamber, the High Speaker met privately with several senior delegates. They congratulated each other, already discussing how to divide Earth's territories once the war ended. None of them noticed that the lights around the station flickered slightly. None of them saw the distant tremor ripple across the far edges of the galaxy, a subtle pulse of gravitational energy, the kind that only human-built systems produced. Across hundreds of light years, silent signals began to move through the void, connecting hidden outposts, ancient defense grids, and cloaked satellites that had been asleep for years. Earth did not rush to prepare for war. It had already prepared long before the galaxy ever heard of it. In orbit around Sul, deep within the shadows of its asteroids, dormant fleets awoke. Their hulls bore no markings, no flags. They activated without sound, forming geometric patterns that shifted with eerie precision. Back on the transport, Hale looked out at the stars and smiled faintly. They think we're afraid, he said quietly. They have no idea what's already begun. As the transport vanished into the dark, the Council's world continued to gleam peacefully in the distance, unaware that somewhere deep in human-controlled space, something vast had started to move. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as a single encrypted message echoed through the Terran network. The Assembly has chosen war. Proceed with contingency protocol, and with that, humanity stopped being silent. The galaxy just hadn't realized it yet. The Galactic Council's chamber once again shimmered with light, but this time it carried tension thick enough to drown in. Every representative sat rigid, voices hushed, watching as three human figures stood at the center of the platform. The humans' posture was calm, their expressions unreadable. Around them, thousands of alien eyes gleamed with suspicion and triumph. The war declaration had been made. The Council expected fear. Instead, the humans appeared almost bored. The High Speaker rose, his tall frame glowing beneath the golden arc of the chamber. Representatives of Earth, he said, his voice booming through the hall. The Assembly's vote is final. The fleets are mobilizing. Your refusal to submit has condemned your species. The lead human this time was a woman named Amina Ross. She was slender, young compared to the ancient beings surrounding her, but her gaze was steady. Her uniform bore no medals, no rank, only a small insignia, an outline of Earth encircled by stars. We understand, she said softly, her voice echoing with confidence that seemed almost out of place. Then you have made your decision. Indeed, the High Speaker replied. This council does not negotiate with defiant worlds. Amina looked up at the vast sea of alien representatives, her eyes sweeping over rows of shimmering wings, metallic carapaces and pulsing bioluminescent forms. Then I must ask one question, she said. Do you believe this war will bring you peace? The chamber murmured uneasy. One of the crystalline delegates leaned forward. Peace will come when your kind is contained. Amina smiled faintly. Containment, she repeated. That word never ends well. Before the speaker could respond, a quiet tone sounded through the hall. It was the signal of the war fleet. confirmation that the first waves of ships had already begun to move toward human space. The alien delegate straightened, satisfied. Amina watched them with calm eyes. "You move fast," she said. "But not fast enough. What do you mean?" the speaker demanded. "You'll see," Amina replied. Soon enough, guards surrounded the humans and escorted them out, weapons raised. Yet the humans walked with the same quiet confidence, as though they knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. When the great doors closed behind them, the chamber erupted into noise, voices arguing over battle plans, strategies, and rewards. The High Speaker called for silence. "Deploy reconnaissance fleets," he ordered. "We will strike the moment we have their defense coordinates." Across the galaxy, massive fleets began to move. Carriers the size of cities, ships armed with plasma arrays and gravity lances surged into hyperspace. Broadcasts filled the network with images of alien admirals preparing for war. The news spread like fire. Earth would fall within days. The galaxy celebrated, confident in its numbers. But Earth said nothing. No response came from the humans. No transmission, no signal of defense, no plea for peace. The Terran channels went dark. The silence unnerved even the most confident generals. On the Council's observation deck, a young alien analyst named Varen studied the incoming data from the invasion fleets. His kind were small insectoid, known for their precision and logic. For days he had tracked human systems, searching for patterns, but what he found made no sense. "Sir," he said to his superior, "there's something wrong with the readings." The elder turned to him. "Explain." "These coordinates," Varen said, pointing to a holographic map of human space. "They're colonies. Some of them no longer exist." The elder frowned. "Destroyed?" "No," Varen said. Moved. Their planetary signatures are gone, but the signals that mark their orbit remain, artificially replicated as if to make us think they're still there." The elder laughed, dismissive. "Your instruments are malfunctioning. The humans lack that level of sophistication." Varen hesitated, then looked back at the flickering data. "Maybe," he said. "But I don't think they're running from us. I think they're hiding something." Meanwhile, the first fleet crossed the border into human-controlled space. Over 200 warships glided through the darkness, their hulls gleaming against the stars. Commanders spoke proudly over the open channels. "The Terrans won't even see us coming," one boasted. Then silence. Within 3 minutes of entering human territory, every signal vanished. No distress calls, no sensor readings, no wreckage. It was as if the entire fleet had ceased to exist. The Council dismissed it as a hyperspace malfunction at first. A second fleet was sent. This one carried heavier shields, faster drives, and more advanced scanning systems. They entered cautiously, recording every fluctuation in the void. For 20 minutes, everything was calm. Then one by one, their signals blinked out, until the last transmission came through, a single voice distorted by static. "They're here," it said. "But they're not where we think." The transmission cut off. Back in the council hall, panic began to grow. Representatives shouted over one another, demanding explanations. Some accused rival species of sabotaging the fleets. Others suggested that human weapons had evolved beyond detection. The High Speaker ordered all reconnaissance drones to probe the edges of human space. Dozens were sent. None returned. Amid the chaos, Varen watched the live feeds with cold dread. "They're not reacting," he murmured. "They're controlling the reaction." His superior ignored him. "Nonsense. They can't control the grid." But Varen was already typing rapidly on his console. He accessed an ancient archive of council communications. Comparing it with the recent signals from human sectors, his small eyes widened. The same data pattern appeared, an encryption code so subtle it had gone unnoticed for centuries. The code wasn't alien. It was human. Varen's mandibles clicked nervously. "They've been in our systems," he whispered. "They've been inside the network the whole time." The elder turned sharply. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Varen said, "they knew this war was coming before we declared it." He looked around, but no one believed him. They laughed, claiming paranoia. Yet even as they dismissed his warning, lights flickered throughout the station. The council's communication grid shuddered. Screens glitched, showing flashes of static and symbols no one could translate. On the main display, the image of the Earth appeared. Beneath it, words scrolled across in the Assembly's own script. "Cease hostilities." "You are trespassing." The delegates stared in shock. The high speaker slammed his staff. "This is a bluff," he shouted. "Cut that transmission." But before his command could be carried out, every console on the deck shut down. The station lights dimmed, replaced by the faint glow of a human voice, calm and steady, echoing through every speaker. "We asked for peace," the voice said. "You chose war. Do not enter our space again." The message repeated once, then vanished. System slowly rebooted, leaving the council in stunned silence. In the following days, fear spread through the galaxy. No one could contact the missing fleets. Navigation through human territory became impossible. Every ship that tried simply disappeared. Trade routes shifted. Communication networks failed. The galaxy had declared war, but the enemy refused to fight on their terms. Baron sat alone in his darkened chamber, watching the empty data feeds. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Galactic Assembly had lost control. He whispered to himself, "They're not silent because they're afraid. They're silent because they're ready." On the far side of the galaxy, Earth's orbit glowed faintly with the reflection of thousands of hidden ships, their hulls blending perfectly into the blackness of space. From above, they looked like shadows in motion. Deep within one of the command vessels, Amina Ross stood before a vast holographic map of the galaxy. "They've made their move," she said quietly. Her aide looked uneasy. "They'll keep sending fleets." Amina's expression didn't change. "Let them," she said. "They still think this is a war. They'll learn it's a mistake." As she turned toward the viewport, the stars outside seemed to shift slightly as though responding to her words. A faint hum filled the ship, the sound of engines far beyond the assembly's comprehension coming to life. On the council world, the high speaker sat alone, staring at the empty reports from the front. "They're only humans," he muttered to himself. "Just humans." But somewhere in the dark, the echo of Amina's words carried through the void. "You move fast," she had said, but not fast enough. The galaxy was beginning to understand what she meant. The great hall of the Galactic Council shimmered once again with the cold light of 1,000 suns. Massive banners of countless civilizations hung from the high arches. Holographic symbols drifted in the air, marking the presence of empires older than recorded time. At the center of it all stood 3 humans, small and fragile in appearance, surrounded by a storm of alien power. Every seat in the chamber was filled. Every eye was fixed on them. The high speaker rose slowly. His translucent skin pulsed with blue veins of energy. "Representatives of Earth," he began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "You are brought here not as diplomats but as aggressors. You have attacked fleets belonging to this assembly. You have disrupted our communication networks. Explain yourselves before judgment is passed." The lead human was a man named Elias Ward. His uniform was plain, bearing no symbols of rank. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a quiet sharpness that unsettled many in the room. He looked around, studying the endless tiers of alien delegates. "We attacked no one," he said evenly. "Your fleets entered our space without permission. They ceased to exist because they refused to leave." A wave of noise rippled through the chamber. One of the crystalline delegates slammed its limb against the railing. "Lies, you destroyed over 200 ships." Elias didn't raise his voice. "We defended ourselves," the high speaker glared. "You cannot destroy entire armadas and call it defense." Elias took a small step forward. "Then perhaps you should ask yourselves why your ships vanished instead of burning in battle. You might find the truth more interesting than your assumptions." The chamber erupted in shouts and hisses. Some delegates demanded sanctions, others called for extermination. The speaker silenced them with a thunderous strike of his staff. "Enough. Humanity has defied this council long enough. You will surrender all military capabilities immediately." Elias met the speaker's gaze. "You can't demand what you don't understand." The speaker's eyes narrowed. "We understand that you are dangerous." Elias smiled faintly. "You have no idea how dangerous ignorance can be." The guards moved closer, weapons ready. But Elias raised his hand calmly. "You're frightened," he said softly. "That's understandable. You think you control the galaxy. You think your laws make you untouchable. But tell me something. Did you ever ask who built the network that connects your worlds?" The speaker frowned. "What are you implying?" "The truth," Elias said, his voice quiet but steady. "Your communication relays. Your data gates. Your automated routes through hyperspace. You believe they're your invention?" "They're not." A cold silence filled the room. Elias continued. 2 centuries ago, before humanity was officially recognized by this assembly, we studied your infrastructure. We found its weaknesses. We improved it. You didn't notice because you thought your systems had simply evolved. They didn't, we rebuilt them. The speaker's glow dimmed. That's impossible. Elias's smile didn't fade. No, it's inevitable. As his words echoed, the lights in the chamber flickered. One by one, the translation drones fell silent. The holographic banners blinked out. Delegates shouted as their communication links failed. The chamber, once filled with sound, was now buried in darkness and static. A single hologram appeared above the platform. It showed the galaxy glowing in soft blue light. Then slowly, red lines began to spread across it. Lines connecting worlds, trade routes, relay stations. The pattern formed a web, and at the center of that web was Earth. Elias looked up at it. You've built your power on systems you didn't control. Now you're learning what control really means. The speaker struck his staff again, but no sound came from it. The power was gone. His energy field flickered, unstable. Panic spread as the chamber's atmosphere control fluctuated. You can't do this, one delegate screamed. Elias turned toward the massive doors as they opened. Outside, alarms blared through the council station. Systems were collapsing. Communication hubs, defense grids, navigation arrays, all going dark one by one. This isn't war, Elias said. This is correction. He walked past the guards, who no longer dared to move. Behind him, the holographic map of the galaxy changed again. Entire sectors blinked red. Across the stars, fleets that had been sent to destroy Earth found themselves blind. Navigation failed. Engines froze. Artificial gravity reversed in some ships, crushing crews in seconds. Others simply vanished from known space, erased by what appeared to be precision gravitational anomalies. Within an hour, every fleet that had entered human space was gone. News reached the council too late. Panic spread to every world as planets lost contact with one another. Governments shouted across the void, demanding answers. But the only transmission that came through was a short, calm message, repeated endlessly on every frequency. Cease hostilities. Withdraw, or we will assume full control. The assembly gathered again in chaos. The speaker shouted for order, his once proud voice now strained with fear. We cannot surrender to them. They are one world against thousands. But one of the senior delegates, a being older than most civilizations in the room, spoke quietly. They are not one world anymore. They are something else. Varen, the analyst who had studied human patterns for months, stood near the lower ranks. His mandibles clicked nervously as he watched the chaos unfold. They've been preparing for centuries, he whispered. We thought they were new to the stars, but they were already waiting for us. The speaker turned to him. What are you saying? Varen looked up. They didn't build fleets to invade. They built networks to control, and they just reminded us who owns the sky. Meanwhile, on a distant human command vessel, Elias stood before a wide viewport looking at the stars. A quiet hum filled the ship as the crew monitored hundreds of collapsing systems. His aide approached, uncertain. They'll surrender soon, she said. Elias shook his head. They won't, not yet. They still believe they can rebuild what's already gone. She hesitated. And if they attack again? Elias turned to her. Then we'll erase the word attack from their history. Back in the council chamber, the speaker called an emergency vote. The delegates argued, their voices desperate. Some demanded immediate peace. Others, blind with pride, shouted for a counterattack. The speaker silenced them with a trembling gesture. We cannot let one species dictate the fate of the galaxy. But before he could speak further, every light in the chamber went out. A single projection appeared in the center, a human figure standing tall, his features sharp but expression neutral. It was not Elias. It was an artificial projection built from his voice and likeness. This is not conquest, it said. This is balance. You declared war. We declined, yet you persisted. This ends now. The hologram's eyes glowed faintly. The network belongs to us again. We will not harm you if you return to your worlds and stay there. Continue this war and your civilizations will become memories. Then the image vanished. The speaker sank back into his seat, his staff dim. Around him no one spoke. The galaxy's most powerful government had been rendered silent. On the human vessel, Elias closed his eyes. They'll call us monsters, he said quietly. His aide nodded. Probably. He looked back at the stars. Then let them. Monsters survive. Far away, deep in the void between galaxies, the last remnants of the Assembly's fleets drifted silently through the darkness. No one knew what had happened to them. No one would ever find out. In the Council's ruined chamber, Farron stared at the flickering holographic map of the galaxy. Entire sectors now glowed red. He whispered to no one in particular. They told us to stay away. We should have listened. And in the quiet that followed, the galaxy understood a truth it had ignored for far too long. Humanity didn't seek war. They simply refused to lose. The chamber of the Galactic Council pulsed with shifting light as thousands of alien voices filled the air. Beings of crystal, plasma, and flesh debated in languages carried by sound, scent, and electromagnetic pulses. Suspended above a sea of delegates, the circular platform of judgment hovered in silence, waiting. A door opened at the edge of the platform, and 3 humans stepped into the blinding glow. The chamber fell silent at once. The leader, a woman named Captain Lyra Kane, kept her shoulders straight though her pulse was racing. On either side of her stood 2 companions, Admiral Holt, gray-haired and calm, and diplomatic envoy Dr. Julian Merrick, his eyes scanning every alien face in the hall. Lyra stopped in the center of the platform, facing the enormous figure that presided over the council. The High Arbiter's body shimmered with golden scales that reflected the light like liquid metal. When he spoke, his voice filled every mind in the chamber, bypassing the need for translation. "Representatives of Earth," he said, his tone calm but commanding. "You stand before this council accused of defying the expansion treaty, attacking council reconnaissance fleets, and deploying forbidden technologies. You are to answer for your crimes." Lyra looked up, unflinching. "With respect, High Arbiter, we have committed no crimes. We defended ourselves against ships that entered our system uninvited." A ripple of color washed over the chamber as delegates muttered among themselves. One of the reptilian counselors leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Defended? You annihilated 12 vessels and disabled a command carrier. That is not defense. That is extermination." Dr. Merrick took a calm breath. "If your fleets hadn't fired first, none of them would have been harmed." The Arbiter's voice grew colder. "You claim innocence, yet your actions disrupted an entire sector. The Council has maintained peace across thousands of worlds for 10,000 years. No species has ever resisted the authority of this body." Admiral Holt finally spoke, his voice low but carrying across the silence. "Then perhaps it's time someone did." The room erupted in outrage. Lightning-like arcs of light shot from the energy platforms as delegates shouted in fury. Some demanded Earth's destruction. Others called for immediate sanction. The Arbiter raised a hand and the chaos fell quiet. "You are guests in this chamber. But be warned, humans, defiance has a price. You stand before the weight of 1,000 civilizations." Lyra nodded slowly. "And yet we came." Her words hung in the silence, heavy and deliberate. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. She took a step forward, her voice firm. "You mistake our silence for weakness. You believe that because Earth stayed quiet for centuries, we are small, naive, primitive. But the truth is simple. We watched. We learned. And when your fleets came, we were ready." The chamber fell so quiet that even the hum of the energy core beneath them could be heard. A thin, avian delegate leaned forward, feathers bristling. "You dare claim parity with the Council?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Parity? No, we're beyond it." The Arbiter's golden light flickered. "Explain." Dr. Merrick stepped forward and activated a small cube in his hand. A soft blue projection expanded outward, showing the spiral arms of the galaxy dotted with points of light. "For 2 centuries, Earth remained under observation by your networks," he said. "You classified us as developing. You restricted us from joining trade routes. You isolated us." He tapped the cube again. The map shifted, showing red lines that connected the dots. "So we built our own." The hologram zoomed in, showing sectors of Council-controlled space slowly lighting up with hidden channels, wormholes, and dark energy relays. It revealed a network built under the Council's nose, interconnected, silent, unseen. "These are our own slipstream corridors," Merrick said. "Independent from your system. Hidden inside the gravitational shadows of your own beacons. We can reach any world in your territory within minutes." Shock rippled through the room. The holograms of countless delegates blinked and buzzed as their homeworlds lit up red on the display. Even the Arbiter hesitated. Lyra continued, her tone steady. "We didn't want war. But when your fleets came, we realized the truth. You don't fear violence. You fear equality. The Arbiter leaned forward, voice trembling with suppressed rage. You've built these routes in violation of every law written by the Council. You have trespassed into our territories. Holt met his gaze. You drew the borders. We decided they didn't matter. For a long moment, no one spoke. The chamber flickered with light as delegates whispered through private channels, but none dared to interrupt. Then the Arbiter rose to his full height, towering above the humans. If what you say is true, humanity has committed an act of cosmic sabotage. The punishment is erasure. Lyra took a slow breath. Before you decide that, she said softly, you should check your relays. The Arbiter hesitated. Marek touched the cube once more. A faint sound filled the air, a low pulse, rhythmic and rising. The holographic map changed again. The red lines across the galaxy began to blink. One by one, systems throughout the Council's network dimmed. Communication lines failed. Power nodes collapsed. Starships went blind as their navigation arrays fell offline. Entire trade routes blinked into darkness. We didn't destroy anything, Marek said. We just showed you how fragile your order really is. Panic spread through the chamber. Delegates shouted in disbelief as their holographic feeds flickered and vanished. The Arbiter's body glowed erratically as he tried to re-establish contact with his command worlds. Lyra stood calm amid the storm. Now you see why we came, she said. You thought to make an example of us. But today we remind you that the galaxy does not belong to the old empires anymore. It belongs to those who adapt. The Arbiter turned, his voice filled with disbelief. You would cripple the Council's systems just to make a point? Holt's reply was steady. No. To keep you from making the mistake of thinking you can control us. For the first time in its long history, the Council chamber trembled, not from violence, but from fear. The galaxy's oldest government had just witnessed a power it couldn't predict, couldn't measure, couldn't contain. Slowly, the Arbiter sank back into his throne. What is it you want? He asked, voice cold and hollow. Lyra met his gaze. Recognition, respect, freedom from your laws. Leave Earth alone. Leave our colonies untouched. Do that and the systems will come back online. The silence stretched long. Finally, the Arbiter nodded once. Very well. You have your autonomy. But if you ever threaten this Council again, you will face the united might of the galaxy. Lyra inclined her head slightly. Then let's hope that day never comes. The humans turned and walked away as the doors opened behind them. As they stepped into the corridor, the lights of the Council chamber flickered uncertainly, systems slowly coming back to life. Inside, the delegates spoke in hushed voices. None of them mentioned revenge. None dared. The sight of the map, those red lines reaching into every corner of the galaxy, was burned into their minds. High above the chamber, a single recording drone captured the moment humanity walked free from the Council's judgment. Within days, the footage spread to every world. Billions of beings watched as the small, defiant species from the forgotten edge of the spiral arm faced the greatest power in the galaxy, and didn't bow. On the human flagship orbiting the edge of the Council's world, Lyra stood before the viewport. Stars stretched endlessly before her, vast and silent. Holt joined her, hands behind his back. They won't forgive this, he said quietly. They don't have to, she replied. They just have to remember. Marek walked in, smiling faintly. The networks are coming back online. We've restored most of their systems. Lyra nodded. Good. Let them think they're in control again. It'll keep them comfortable. She turned to face the stars. Comfort breeds mistakes. And when they make the next one, we'll be ready. Far below in the Council chamber, the Arbiter stared at the dimming map of the galaxy. One corner still glowed red, Earth's territory. It was small, insignificant by comparison. Yet somehow it radiated more power than all the others combined. He whispered to himself, voice barely audible. How did we let them come this far? But deep down he already knew the answer. Humanity hadn't come this far. They had been waiting all along. The Galactic Council chamber was once the most powerful room in the universe. Its very name could shake worlds, move fleets, and decide the fate of entire civilizations. But now the same chamber trembled, not from its authority, but from fear. The massive hall glowed in eerie silence as hundreds of alien delegates sat in tense rows. The air rippled with faint energy fields, translators humming quietly, while their leaders waited for the next human transmission to arrive. It had been 3 weeks since Earth's representatives had left the chamber. 3 weeks since the humans had crippled half of the Council's network, and still no one dared to strike back. The High Arbiter stood in the center of the hall, his golden scales dimmed from exhaustion. His voice echoed through the room, slow and cold. "They demand another audience." The delegates reacted instantly. A chorus of whispers erupted. "They cannot dictate terms," hissed a four-eyed reptilian envoy. "They defied the Council. They should be destroyed." A crystalline delegate pulsed a faint blue tone. "Destroy them? You forget their networks reach into our defense grids. They could collapse our fleets with a single command." Another alien slammed a tentacle against the table. "They are a primitive species. Their arrogance must not stand." The Arbiter raised his hand and silence returned. "Prepare the chamber," he said. "If humanity wishes to speak, we will listen, but not as equals." Moments later, the main door opened and 3 humans entered once again. Captain Lyra Kane led the group, her eyes steady and unreadable. Beside her were Admiral Holt and Dr. Julian Merrick. Every step they took echoed in the chamber like a drumbeat. The lights dimmed slightly as the humans reached the center. Lyra stopped, hands behind her back, gaze locked on the Arbiter. "We received your message," she said. "You wanted clarification. I'm here to give it." The Arbiter's golden eyes narrowed. "Clarification? You have already made your position clear. You defied the laws of the galaxy, and yet you expect to be left alone. What could possibly remain to discuss?" Lyra tilted her head slightly. "The part where you think we care about your declaration of war." The words hit the room like a blade through glass. The entire chamber froze. Hundreds of alien eyes fixed on her. A low hum filled the air from the energy field straining under the tension. Admiral Holt stepped forward. "You declared war against Earth 3 days ago. Every human outpost received your message. You expected panic. You expected surrender. You got silence," Dr. Merrick added. "That silence wasn't fear. It was calculation." The Arbiter's light flickered dangerously. "You cannot possibly hope to win against the combined fleets of the Council." "You stand alone." Lyra smiled faintly. "You misunderstand. We don't intend to fight a war." A murmur ran through the delegates. One of them leaned forward. "Then what do you intend to do?" Lyra raised her wrist, activating a holographic display. It showed the galaxy again, the same vast map that had terrified them before. But this time the red lines were thicker. More systems glowed under human control, more corridors pulsing with silent energy. "This," she said. "You see, while you've been debating in this room, humanity has been busy. You declared war, but you never noticed your fleets stopped moving. Your gates stopped opening. Your supply routes are frozen." The Arbiter's voice trembled. "Impossible. Our systems run on your networks," Lyra finished calmly. "Networks built by your engineers, powered by your energy signatures, and monitored by our algorithms. You didn't realize it, but every communication array, every navigation node, every wormhole beacon, you've been sharing data with us for years. We didn't just learn from you. We became part of your infrastructure." The hall fell into shocked silence. Dr. Merrick continued softly. "The Council doesn't control the galaxy anymore. You just govern the parts we let you." The Arbiter's aura darkened, his voice cracking like thunder. "You dare threaten the Council with sabotage? You risk annihilation." Lyra took a slow step closer. "You can't annihilate what you can't reach. We know where your fleets are. We know your command codes. And we know your backup systems because we helped you fix them after your last war." The Arbiter was silent. Then, from the far corner of the chamber, an old alien delegate rose. His translucent form flickered with age, but his voice was steady. "This is not a war. This is a takeover." Lyra's eyes turned to him. "No, it's a correction. You built this council to keep order. You built laws to keep species like ours contained. But your order is built on fear. You demand obedience, not cooperation. You call it peace, but it's control. And humanity doesn't do control." The delegates stirred, voices mixing in panic and outrage. Some shouted for resistance, others for negotiation. The Arbiter raised his hand again, energy sparking from his palm. "Enough. If you seek dominance, human, then you will find no peace here." Lyra looked directly at him. "We didn't come for peace. We came for balance." The chamber lights dimmed again. Every screen flickered. The massive galactic map above the chamber began to pulse in time with the heartbeat of the human's projection system. One by one, new points of light appeared across the map. Human colonies, stations, fleets. They spread farther than anyone had imagined, even beyond the Council's reach. Dr. Merrick's voice echoed softly, almost like a whisper carried through the stars. You thought you ruled thousands of worlds, but half of them trade with us now. Half of them depend on our data, our medicine, our food, our technology. You can't wage war without breaking your own systems. The Arbiter stared at the growing red web across the galaxy. His golden glow dimmed to a faint shimmer. You've infected us, he said slowly. Like a virus, Lyra nodded slightly. Maybe, but some infections make the body stronger. The silence stretched. No one dared move. Then at last, the Arbiter spoke again, his tone quieter now. What do you propose then, humanity? Lyra's voice was calm. End your war before it begins. Dismantle your decrees. Create a true alliance, one built on partnership, not subjugation. Or continue this war, and watch your empire collapse under its own weight. For a long time, the chamber was utterly still. Then, one by one, the alien delegates began to power down their translator systems, a sign of submission, a sign of agreement. Finally, the Arbiter lowered his head. Very well. The Council will withdraw its declaration. Earth will be recognized as sovereign and equal. Lyra nodded once. Then we have an understanding. She turned and began walking away. The humans exited without another word. As the doors closed behind them, the great chamber of the Galactic Council remained in absolute silence. Later, as the human delegation's ship drifted above the Council world, Admiral Holt stood by the observation window staring at the distant stars. They gave in, he said softly. No resistance. Just silence. Lyra joined him, her expression unreadable. They'll need time to understand what's changed. The galaxy just realized it isn't run by fear anymore. Dr. Merrick smiled faintly. And what runs it now? Lyra looked out into the black sea of space. Respect. Maybe fear too. But mostly the knowledge that humanity doesn't fight for control. We fight for freedom. Below them, the once mighty Council planet spun quietly, lights flickering across its cities. Messages began spreading across the stars. Humans were no longer a new species. They were a force. A civilization that had stared down the galaxy's oldest power and hardly cared for its threats. In the following weeks, dozens of alien worlds reached out to Earth, some for trade, some for alliance, and some simply to ask how they had done it. Humanity responded not with arrogance, but with quiet precision, offering knowledge, sharing technology, expanding influence through diplomacy instead of guns. Yet in the deep archives of the Galactic Council, the High Arbiter recorded one final note. He sealed it under his personal mark, a warning for all who came after. It read simply, "Do not attack the humans. They will not conquer you. They will simply outlast you." And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, Earth's fleets continued their silent expansion, slipping through corridors no one else could detect, building a network not of war, but of inevitability. For the first time in galactic history, the Council's throne no longer stood at the center of power. It had shifted to a small blue planet that hardly seemed to care it ruled the stars.